Before we begin today's video, I want to give a message of solidarity to the approximately 800 women and other childbearing people in the United States who watch my videos. I was horrified to learn about the U.S. Supreme Court's overturning of Roe v. Wade. Horrified, but unfortunately not surprised in the least. When I was in university, one of the arts electives I took was a class called Ethics of Life and Death, and it was exactly what it sounds like. We talked about abortion, assisted suicide, the ethics of caring for somebody with dementia or some other degenerative brain disease, stuff like that. And we spent a great deal of the semester talking about Roe versus Wade. And when you learn in a formal setting and study what it took half a century ago to get to that point, you can't imagine that anyone would ever take it away. It seemed like an obvious law to have. But obviously, we're in a different era now. One full of lawmakers who don't seem to care that lives will be ruined and people will die as a result of what's happened. And then there's the precedent it sets. What are they going to take away next? You know? And you better believe that here in Canada, there are plenty of lawmakers who want the same thing to happen here. So know that I stand by you, we stand by you, and don't stop fighting for your rights. The need to press on is greater now than ever. And if you're uncomfortable by the fact that I'm using my platform to say this, that's good. This is a difficult conversation to have, and the first step to having it is leaving your comfort zone. And if you think what I'm saying is wrong, then maybe you should watch somebody else's videos. But that's all I wanted to say. Stay strong, and now let's get to today's video. I'm pretty excited to show you the item in today's video because what I have here is another vintage smoke alarm that I bought brand new in the package. This is a Wake and Warn 2 smoke detector model 05-51-03CL. And I don't know when it was made yet, but the copyright year on the package is 1991. Now, I got this for a few reasons. First of all, it was cheap. I got this for like $17 shipped on eBay, which is pretty great. Second of all, when I was a child, I actually had two of these smoke alarms. Now, I don't consider myself, you know, the smoke and fire alarm aficionado on the level of, say, BA&F Vintage, which is a great YouTube channel to watch if you're into this stuff. But they do interest me, at least some. And they kind of have my whole life, for whatever reason. When I was a kid, I had two of these, two smoke alarms of this style. And eventually, you know, they both stopped working for whatever reason or another. It was sad when they stopped working. And this particular style of smoke alarm is just kind of nostalgic for me as a whole because I have seen so many of these throughout my entire life, and indeed these were an extremely common smoke alarm from the late 80s through to the mid 2000s, if not later. But especially the 90s was when the bulk of these were purchased and installed. Throughout my life, I've seen many of these out in the wild. Several years ago, I made a video of one that I found in my grandparents' home. Here at my grandparents' place. This is a mint-in-the-box Wake and Warn smoke alarm. I've seen a lot of these throughout my life. So here it is. Yeah, I had two of these as a kid. I was a weird kid. and I do believe that was the very last time I ever stayed overnight at my grandparents' house before they both passed away. So rest in peace, Grammy and Grampy. A few years after that, I found a non-working one in an apartment I had moved into. This is the smoke alarm that came with my new apartment here. It's actually a wake and warn smoke alarm, which is very cool. But yeah, I think these are kind of neat. I've seen them throughout my entire life, and I still see them once in a while today. And finding those two kind of reminded me that these were a thing that existed and were, in at least a small way, a part of my childhood. And I've really wanted to get another one, but I just never bothered to bite the bullet. Well, I did this time when I saw this one on eBay. And there were a couple other reasons that gave me incentive to buy it. First of all is the name, Wake and Warn 2. I have never seen any of these branded Wake and Warn 2. What does the 2 mean? I don't know. It looks exactly the same, and literally everything on the entire packaging is identical to most of these that you find in the blister pack that just say Wake and Warn. What's the 2 mean? I don't know. But it kind of intrigued me. The other thing is that the vast majority, pretty much 99% of Wake and Warn smoke alarms that you find in this blister pack have a copyright date of 1992 on the package, whereas this one has a copyright date of 1991. Which makes me wonder if this is perhaps a very early example of a smoke detector in this housing labeled as Wake and Warn. When you start researching this particular smoke alarm, and when I say this particular, I mean the smoke alarm sold in this style of housing, it gets really convoluted because these were sold under several different brand names. If you're in the United States, you will most commonly see these under the Family Guard name. Family Guard spelled G-A-R-D. And you'll come across Wake and Warn branded ones in the United States, but not nearly as common as Family Guard. Here in Canada, it's the opposite. All the ones I've ever seen in the wild here in Canada were branded Wake and Warn, save for one that I've seen, the one that was in my old apartment, that is branded Family Guard. So kind of interesting there. Two different brand names. Why? But it goes even further than that. In the later years of production of these, in the early and mid-2000s, these were sold under the BRK brand name. But even weirder than that, if you bought a BRK branded one, the BRK name was only bore on the package. If you looked on the underside of the unit itself, the brand name was BRK First Alert. The two names put together. So weird. So weird. There's so much convolution regarding what these were called. And then within each brand name, there were separate model numbers that I can't really make sense of. The Family Guard ones, the ones that are about as old as this, are called the FG777D, if I remember right. And the later ones were called the FG888D. But there's no difference between them. Possibly a circuit board revision, but other than that, they're the exact same detector. Why did they need a new model number? And then the BRK branded version was actually called the BRK83RN. And once again, it actually bore both the BRK and First Alert names on the bottom. And that's the only instance of the First Alert name ever appearing on a smoke detector in this housing. Now, for those of you who don't know, all the smoke alarms that are in this housing, regardless if they're branded Family Guard, Wake and Warn, BRK, they're all made by the same company, and that company is BRK Electronics. BRK Electronics is the root company behind the First Alert brand name, the Wake and Warn brand name, and the Family Guard brand name, as well as their own brand name, BRK. The entire history of smoke alarms under those brand names They were all made by the company BRK. Now, if you buy an old First Alert, like my own First Alert SA150 LTA, the box will actually say First Alert by Pitway. BRK was a division of Pitway, and then it was in 1993, I think, that Pitway Corporation spun off BRK Electronics as its own company. So if you see any of these brand names, they were made by BRK. If you see Pitway, Pitway simply owned BRK until it spun off into its own company. So there's all your convolution regarding the brand names that these were sold under. And then another thing that's kind of interesting is that the later ones sold under the Family Guard and BRK names were the only names that survived into the 2000s. I think by the 2000s, the Wake and Warn name had stopped being used, and the remainder of these were sold under Family Guard or BRK. Wake and Warn and Family Guard were BRK's value brands that you'd find in like Kmart or whatever. First Alert was BRK's mainstream premium brand, and then BRK would use their own name for contractor detectors that you would buy in bulk if you were a contractor or a fire department or whatever. So these were actually sold not only in the retail market but in the professional market too. Again, adding to the whole lore of these things. Kind of interesting that this style of smoke alarm has been around in such a wide variety of ways. But what I was going to say was the later units made in the 2000s sold under the Family Guard and BRK names, because of the smoke alarm regulations that had changed by that point, these actually got a code 3 alarm. A code 3 alarm is 3 beeps, a pause, 3 beeps, and a pause, and almost every smoke alarm from a major manufacturer that you'll buy today has that style of alarm, rather than just the repeated beep beep beeping. And these actually lasted long enough that they did get a revised PCB with the code 3 alarm instead of the older alarm, which is called a code 4.6 or a code 5.6 depending on how it sounds. And yeah, these just lasted forever. The earliest smoke alarms in this housing were sold under the Family Guard name beginning in 1986, if my research is correct. And then the Wake and Warn units started appearing. Well, this is literally the oldest Wake and Warn branded unit in this housing that I've ever seen, so 1991. And then the newest ones I've seen were made in 2006. So 20 years that these were made. And so no wonder people, not only people my age, but people a lot younger and a lot older than me, know these smoke alarms when they see them. They just became so ubiquitous. They were the cheap and cheerful smoke alarm of their time. So, now that I've mentioned, I think, all of the crap that you didn't want to know about this thing, let's actually read the stuff on the package, and then we'll cut it open. So, we've got the odd and unexplained Wake and Warn 2 name. And it says 9-volt battery include. Oh no, I didn't notice that until now. 9-volt battery included. So there's a battery in this thing, and I hope it hasn't leaked. Modern 9-volt batteries don't leak, but older ones definitely do. The batteries that came with my First Alert SA150 LTA had pretty much ruptured. Or one of them had. It came with a carbon zinc one and an alkaline one. And I think the alkaline one was fine and the carbon zinc one had ruptured. So hopefully we don't have a gross battery inside this thing. Hinge cover for easy battery replacement. Beeping signal warns when battery needs replacing. Test button checks all detector functions. 3-year limited warranty. UL listed. See what's on the back. Wake and Warn 2 smoke detector. Protection at every level of your home is a must. And then it gives you all the standard stuff about where you should put them. America's outstanding smoke detector value. Wake and Warn 2 is a precision electronic instrument made by a world leader in smoke detectors. That is true, BRK. Every step in manufacturing is carefully quality controlled. Detector supplied with 9-volt battery. Has 30-day low battery signal. Hinged cover makes battery replacement easy and cannot be closed without a battery in place. Detector contains 1 microcurie of americium-241, a radioactive material. This is, of course, an ionization detector, as all cheap detectors were. And so it has that radioactive material. We can see the book it comes with, also labeled Wake and Warn 2, 3-year warranty. Now, kind of interesting. So it says, I showed you the copyright date here, but it says copyright 1991, Wake and Warn 2, made by Wake and Warn 2. So they're claiming that the actual name of the company, and not just the product, is Wake and Warn 2. That makes no sense. Why wouldn't it say, made by Wake and Warn? It makes no sense to me. And so when I see the use of the 2 in the company name, which it really wasn't just a company, it was just a brand name of BRK, but it makes me wonder if they put the 2 for some sort of legal reason. Were they skirting around something by using the 2 and then changing the name of the company, and they were able to skirt around some sort of legal thing? I have no idea. But it gets weirder when the actual name of the so-called company is Wake and Warn 2. Assembled in Mexico of U.S. and foreign components and materials. So that's it. Now to release it from this beautiful packaging for the first time in 31 years. Somebody bought this, never opened it, and we're going to do that now. I'm excited. Alright, freed from its plastic prison, here it is. And it looks good. It's nice and white. The plastic blister pack absorbed all the UV, so this thing hasn't turned yellow. It'll probably now turn rapidly yellow, if I had to guess, but we'll find out someday. And let's take a look at the bottom here. Ah, interesting. So this does not bear the Wake and Warn 2 name on the detector itself. It just says Wake and Warn 055103. Assembled in Mexico. Well, there you go. The unit itself doesn't even bear the 2. It's solely on the packaging and the manual. Very interesting. Let's take a look at the manual here. There's the manual. Printed in USA. Is there a revision date on it? Yes, there is. January of 1991. I had a theory that where this is such an early unit, this is the earliest example I've ever seen of a smoke alarm in this housing branded Wake and Warn. The only other units this old and older that I had ever seen were branded Family Guard. And it kind of made me wonder if the Wake and Warn 2 name was used, because indeed, before this detector was made, BRK made smoke alarms under the Wake and Warn name that had a different housing. And so I initially wondered if the 2 was used to differentiate this from older Wake and Warn alarms. But the thing is, they've used the Wake and Warn 2 name before. The Wake and Warn name goes back to the mid-70s. It goes back just as far as the first alert name. And I saw a picture of a unit from the 70s that bore the Wake and Warn 2 name. So the 2 just seems to be used, it just seems to be completely arbitrary. I have no idea. But before we look at the unit, let's take a look at the manual here. And see if there's anything interesting in the manual. We'll see how the brand name is used. These instructions are completely generic, because the only place they show the exterior styling of the unit is right there. Everything else is completely generic. This is probably lifted right from the equivalent First Alert model. Yeah, no mention of the brand or anything. So this is just standard issue that was probably sold with the equivalent Family Guard and First Alert models. And yes, there is a First Alert equivalent to this. It is the First Alert model SA67D. It has the exact same PCB that we're going to see inside this one, only the housing is different. So it's kind of funny. BRK was kind of like Casio in that way. They made all these different models of smoke alarms, but at the end of the day they had the exact same guts inside them. It was only the exterior styling that differed. Kind of interesting. Well, let's open this up and hope a battery hasn't exploded its guts all over. So what do we got here? We have a power cell, and it looks to be in good shape. Ooh, no, it has leaked a little bit, but luckily nothing got on the circuit board. I have put the battery to my tongue and it is stone dead. There you go. Power cell, 9-volt battery for all electronic applications. Probably, yeah, carbon zinc. So it's funny, you know, all smoke alarms for the past many years have always said not to use carbon zinc batteries, to use only alkaline ones, but including my First Alert. My First Alert takes 2 batteries, one for the light and one for the unit itself, and it says for the battery used to power the unit itself it has to be alkaline. But for this unit they gave you a carbon zinc one, which is kind of funny. So here's the circuit board, and there's something else unique going on here, which makes me all the more happier that I bought this on eBay, because this really is a unique example of a Wake and Warn branded unit in this housing. This is an earlier revision of PCB than I've ever seen on a smoke alarm in this housing branded Wake and Warn. All the Wake and Warn ones I've ever seen, either in person or on eBay, use a newer revision of this PCB. The only ones I've ever seen with this earlier revision PCB were Family Guard branded units. So again, I've got a very early example of a Wake and Warn unit in this housing that uses this PCB. Very neat. But there we go, and once again, exact same PCB you'll find in a similar age First Alert SA67D or Family Guard FG777D. Exactly the same. And I believe the BRK83R also used this PCB, if it's a similar age. But yeah, there we go. You got your piezo horn. Luckily, despite this being an earlier revision, it does have the good ionization chamber. Family Guard units from before when this was made used an earlier ionization chamber that in the smoke detector enthusiast community is called the false sensor for that exact reason. It has a problem with false alarms, and it's just because that ionization chamber has really big holes in it that let pieces of debris in, and then it causes false alarms. But this one's got the good sensor, which they still use today. BRK is still using this chamber today in their cheap low-end model smoke alarms. So that just goes to show they got it right with this one, which is nice. And of course, this is the same chamber and same horn that's used in my First Alert. The rest of the PCB, of course, is different because the First Alert is the escape light model, and it also has the light test function. So it's a very different PCB, but it uses these same 2 components. Okay, cool. Well, we've got a nice looking unit, brand new out of the package after 31 years. So, I have a fresh battery here. It's actually a rechargeable battery, so I'm not sure how well it'll work because the nominal voltage is 8.4 volts. But let's put the battery in and see how this thing works. Now I'm not going to do that out here, just to reduce the amount of noise from beeping that escapes this apartment and makes my neighbors worry. Let's actually go into my bedroom and we'll do this in there. Alright, welcome to my bedroom, where it's nice and quiet. That's gonna end soon. It's actually a little bit nostalgic. I haven't filmed a video sitting on a bed, which is how I did videos for over a decade. I haven't done a video sitting on a bed like this in 3.5 years. But let's see if my rechargeable battery can power this thing. I put a piece of tape over the horn. That's not gonna matter. It's gonna be loud as hell anyway. And usually with these BRK made units, they will beep when you put a battery in as a self-test procedure. First I'll say you don't need to turn down your speakers or your headphones. I will normalize the audio in editing so that the beeping is no louder than my speech has been, so don't worry about that. Get my battery in there. Wow, that was super loud. Okay. It's on. I saw the LED blink once. So it does have an LED that blinks once every minute, I think. Either every minute or every 30 seconds. But it just blinked. Okay, so the thing does look like it's working. I'll hit the test button here, make sure that works. Yes, it does. Okay. Let's do an actual smoke test. I have a candle. I have a lighter. You shouldn't do this on a bed. So do as I say, not as I do. I will lift the candle off the bed here, light it, and then blow it out. And the smoke, I'll hold the alarm over it, and hopefully the smoke enters it and sets it off. So let me light this candle here. Alright, the candle is lit, and I will blow it out. Okay, that might not have been enough. Let me light the candle again and try that again. There we go. Finally. Okay. Wow. That took a long time. And so much lighting and extinguishing of the candle that I can actually literally see the smoke in the air right now. This room is full of smoke. The thing with ionization smoke alarms is that they do need a lot of smoke to go off, which is why photoelectric smoke alarms are generally considered to be better. Actually, today at my mom's house, just as kind of a test, I did the candle test on her smoke alarm. She has a modern ionization smoke alarm. It actually wires into the AC power. Very modern Kita brand smoke alarm, reputable alarm. And it didn't go off. I lit a candle with 3 wicks, like this one, blew it out, plenty of smoke, and it didn't set it off. So ionization alarms are generally just deaf to smoke. But also what caused this one to finally go off was I held it up while the wicks were actually lit, which proves the fact that ionization smoke alarms are most sensitive to smoke, to small particles of smoke caused by stuff that's already on fire, rather than the large particles of smoke caused by smoldering stuff. When I blow out this candle, I'm generating large particles of smoke. but when it's already lit, it's generating the small particles. If this were a photoelectric detector, it probably would have gone off very fast when I blew out the candle. But after several attempts at doing that, I couldn't get this to go off. It finally went off when I kept the wicks lit. But there you go. We saw this thing go off, and it seems to be functioning, if only functioning as well as a ionization smoke alarm could be expected to function. And here it is next to my First Alert SA150 LTA from 1991, same year. This one I also got new in the package back in 2019. I found it at a thrift store, brand new in the box. And yes, I do use this thing. I have had this continuously running in this apartment for the last 2 years. And yeah, it works great. I test it frequently, which you should always do, especially if you're gonna use a vintage smoke alarm. But yeah, it works great. Sometimes it goes off while I'm cooking. Yeah, it's a nice little smoke alarm. The Wake and Warn is a little bit smaller, but about the same thickness. But of course the SA150 LTA was in a bigger housing than other models anyway to accommodate the larger PCB for the light test and emergency light function. A First Alert SA67D will be the exact same size as this, and actually the covers will be interchangeable. You can take the cover off this and put it on an SA67D and vice versa, and they'll fit. But there you go. That's what my two vintage smoke alarms look like next to each other. Now, of course, I'll give the obligatory, if you're a normal person, don't trust your life to vintage smoke alarms. You should replace them every 10 years. That's the general recommendation. In my case, you know, I rent an apartment, and I do believe the law here is that the landlord is responsible for keeping a functioning smoke alarm in the apartment. Well, there was no smoke alarm here when I moved in. So this has been my one smoke alarm, and like I said, because it is old, I test it very frequently with real smoke, and it works very well. And I'll be doing the same with this one as well. And yeah, I'll be using them both. This one sits right above my bedroom door. Not sure what I'll do with this one. I might actually put this in my bedroom and maybe relocate this somewhere else different in this living room. Not sure yet. Well, there you go. That's a unboxing and demo of a Wake and Warn, or Wake and Warn 2 in this unit's case, smoke alarm from 1991. Another piece of my childhood reclaimed. I had two of these. They both broke, and in the 20 years since then I've never acquired another. But now I have this one. It seems to work just fine, and I am very, very happy. Very nice to have one of these very ubiquitous, cheap smoke alarms of the days of old in my hands once again. So there you go. I hope you enjoyed. Went into a bit of lore and probably way more detail than anybody would ever care for. But if you got to this point, I thank you very much for watching, and I do hope you enjoyed. A big thanks to my Patreon supporters as well. Their support helps me indulge in weird stuff like this and other cool old things that I get to show you guys. So their support is greatly appreciated. So that's it. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.